With Madden 19 on the horizon, I thought I'd start to slowly go over the new features of the game. Although by and large we can expect many things from Madden 18 to carry over, there will be two interesting new ripples to the cover 4, namely with the quarters and palms match coverages. These will add a new dynamic to playing defense in Madden 19, and understanding them now will put you a step ahead of the competition.
Deuce close. Mastering Madden.
So this is the Madden 18 cover 4 that we've grown to understand now. This will definitely still be in the game in Madden 19, and we'll kind of take it from this point on as the standard spot drop zone cover 4, where you have 4 zones deep and 3 zones underneath most of the time. Now, cover 4 is actually, pretty popular in real life football. So in 2017 was used around 9% of all defensive snaps, and then you have teams like the Oakland Raiders and Carolina Panthers that are using it even much more than that, almost a third of their snaps. And then, at the college level, you have teams like Michigan State that almost use it exclusively, like that's their bread and butter. Madden 18 was, a little bit differently. It was used really heavily early on, particularly with cover 4 drop show 2, where you actually sacrifice the D lineman and put in an extra hook curl in the middle of the field. And then plus with everybody still kind of getting used to 91 zone coverage, it was really quite dominant because we still didn't really know those spots and how to throw the ball against that. So things were tricky there. And then on top of that, 2 years ago, this became a really sound run D because the introduction of run fits, and then actually getting the run fits for cover 4 right, where the safeties are aggressive in that run fit, you kind of get 9 men in the run support. So really kind of best of all different worlds, but then, things started to open up. But how it plays then essentially is that no matter what, your 4 deep zones, your 4 quarter zones played by, your outside cornerbacks and your safeties are going to drop deep no matter what. Okay. And then, so what you're left with is 4 spot drop prevent zones on the top, working as kind of prevent zones in a way. And then you have 3 underneath zones that are actually matching type zones. So this is okay, if you're coming up against verticals because you have 4 defenders deep and you're coming up against 4 vertical routes. And then, even if things underneath, say you have a slant route from the slot receiver or you have something from the halfback, well, that 3 receiver hook most of the time will match that route there and then kind of play that aggressively, or 99% of the time that's going to be your user defender taking that over. And the quarter flats, they work okay, so they do a pretty good job of relating to that outside wide receiver. So if he breaks inside, they'll kind of cover him, they'll drop underneath him and then cover him inside just a little bit, though once he gets kind of towards the middle of the field, they'll kind of drop off, and they don't really play it aggressively anyway. So you can see how you start to already kind of get overloaded in the middle there, just being alone as a user defender. Now, on top of that, once the routes start to get somewhat smart, so say if you were to do a flat route from the number 2 receiver, well, then things open up over the top of them very, very easily if you keep that quarter flat zone there. So things like this flat route with a deep in or a post or even just a curl route were just easy yards every time. And those quarter zones above it from the corner and the safety would kind of recognize it. They wouldn't go deep too far, but they're still kind of in no man's land. So this throw was always easy 15-20 yards for me, no problem at all. So then what you kind of come up with is you have spot drop zones over the top, match coverage underneath. And the 2 of those working together is just a disaster. So the only way for match coverage to work is if the whole team buys into it. And it definitely doesn't here. Now, on top of that, we know that cover 4 was really, really easy to beat over the top because like I just showed here, where you have these quarter zones, kind of looking at this dig route, kind of not. But then that just leaves everything open over the top. So you can just hit them with a deep post over the top. Easy touchdown there. So then what you're left with is kind of a pseudo prevent defense that, can't even prevent. And then what we kind of moved on to then is just making those adjustments anyway. So we could say maybe put those quarter flats into hard flats. So although you don't, you're kind of still really exposed in the middle of the field and in the deep corners, at least where your flat defenders are going to be, and at least they're going to play that flat zone really aggressively, much more aggressively in the quarter flat. Or more often, you'll see the cloud flat where those guys will kind of drift up and out, and you'll have those deep outs or deep corners covered, and then you'll just use it in the middle of the field where you can, if you're good, you're good. If you're not, there's a lot of zone there, and you can be easily overwhelmed. Or you can bring one of those defensive linemen into the middle, and then you're either sacrificing pass rush, which isn't really good in Madden 18, or more significantly, you're dropping that spy, so you won't have anybody spy the quarterback, and then you're kind of left to fend for the scramble by yourself. So, final verdict: I don't think it's a perfect use of all of the zones. I think 4 deep zones with the 91 zone coverage in Madden 18 was definitely too much. You could definitely always get away with 3, whether that's a cover 3 or the cover 2 with the middle linebacker in the deep third. So then what's coming in Madden 19 is 2 new cover 4 match coverages, and this is the first one. It's quarters, and it's just based off of some really simple rules. So here I have it on the left here where the safety eyes number 2 to 1. Now those numbers are based off of the wide receivers here, and I have it underneath the little icons here. So number 1 is going to be the first wide receiver in from the boundary, number 2 is the second, and so on. So safety eyes number 2 to 1, quarterback eyes number 1 to 2. So what that means is that if number 2 runs vertical, the safety he knows that's his duty. He has to match man coverage on him, and he has to run with him no matter where he goes deep. Same thing with the corner. If he goes vertical, he has to carry him. So what you see then, if you have verticals on that side, those defenders are going to convert to man coverage and cover them deep. So it's going to be similar in a sense to just the spot drop cover 4, where you got to be solid against verticals. You don't want to be outmanned there. Especially, going forward, if 91 zone coverage isn't a thing, you really have to be solid there. But the difference is you're not covering those routes because your defenders happen to be there already. You're covering them because they're going there. And then on the other side, if you have that same flat route from the number 2 receiver, okay, that quarter flat's probably going to take him. But now the safety has nothing to do, right? He's reading number 2 to 1. If number 2 isn't going into his zone, he's free defender here, and he's going to relate to number 1. And so if that number 1 goes, deep, whether it's a streak or a deep post or deep in, he's going to help the cornerback, and he's going to bracket him. So what that's going to do then, he's going to be a kind of a +1. He might be able to get you an interception or pick 6 or something like that. So that's really exciting to me going forward. Other rules: if that safety drops down to bite for play action, which, who knows if that's going to be a thing or not, that cornerback has to help out and almost convert to a deep half. He's got to split those 2 verticals just to make up some ground if that safety bites down. Because, again, remember, those safeties are supposed to be really tough and really aggressive in the run fit. So if they get sucked down by the play action, there's a speedy vertical going over the top. That cornerback needs to help out. That cornerback isn't, by the way, in run support. So that's, concern number 1. Is play action a thing? First of all, if play action isn't a thing, it's ridiculous. But if it's not a thing, you could see these cover 4 match being really, really, really good, where there's no downside in playing really aggressive coverage. But if it is a thing, then this might be something to watch out for. Because if it is a thing and the cornerback isn't helping on these verticals, you can see how we can maybe hit them over the top easily. My prediction is that play action won't work in Madden 19, just like as it hasn't worked for the past couple of years, but we'll see how things go there. Other things, deep routes like smart routed out routes, 10 to 15 yard out routes, should be matched by that cornerback. So you shouldn't have to rely on a cloud flat drifting underneath that route to stop it. That cornerback has a duty there. Okay, because if number 2 is vertical over the top, that safety should have him. So he should play that route aggressively. And, that's another concern. Is that aggression going to be good? It doesn't need to be super, super good. It doesn't need to be making picks and stuff like that. Just make the catch contested. If it's too good, it might be tough to throw on that, like really tough. If it's not good enough, then it's almost like, what's the point of match coverage at all? Other things, if that number 1 goes inside, that cornerback should be able to help there on corner routes or deep out routes from that number 2 receiver. Okay, again, the point of quarters is to start getting these quarter zones involved. Start to get cornerback and safety involved. We don't want them to just drift up and be in no man's land like I showed before. And then from there, that quarter flat, I expect it to just play the flat. But once 1 and 2 switch, number 1 becomes the new 2, and that quarter flat should, wall him off just a little bit. So he shouldn't be left in the flat. He should help out there. And if the quarter flats play the same way as they did last year, I don't think he'll do a good job at that. But he should only do that for a little bit until the 3 receiver hook or the user takes over. So that's a concern. How are those rules going to work? Are some of the more intricate rules of quarters going to be put into the game, or are they going to be done but done poorly? I don't know. And again, quarters is up to interpretation. Lots of different coaches run it different ways. Even other, like I'll show with palms and other match coverages, there's always open to interpretation, but we'll see what EA does with it. Other things that I'm worried about. Another concern is, to me, poor coverage. So if we have 2 vertical going routes on one side, so you get a deep post for number 2, the safety has to take them. If you get a deep post for number 1, the corner has to take them. But if the far corner, both safeties have something to do underneath, and you run a really deep post, well, how well is that cornerback going to do? Because he's probably going to have some sort of outside leverage. And then if you have something fast there and you have no other support inside, can you just throw an inside pass lead and get a huge gain or a touchdown there? It'll really depend on how that man coverage is tweaked. And, again, will it actually depend on ratings? Will it all just be they all play it the same kind of way? Or will man coverage ratings actually take into place there? That's something you should definitely look for. I really hope they find a sweet spot. Because if you have poor coverage, match coverage is going to go out the window, right? Because nobody's running cover 0, nobody's running cover 1 in the game because the man coverage stinks. But if it's really good, they might have something on our hands there to deal with. So that was quarters. Palms is going to be the same look. 4 quarter zones, 3 underneath. The rules are going to be slightly different. So the cornerback and the safety now both key on number 2. So depending on what number 2 does, that cornerback and that safety are going to do something a little bit differently. So the kind of main thing you look for is if that number 2 goes out. If he does a quick out, the cornerback's got to take him. Okay, so this can easily convert to a cover 2 on one or even both sides. So cover 4 palms is also known as 2 read or trap, where you're looking like you're going to play quarters, you're looking like you're going to play cover 4, but that cornerback can trap him and hopefully get interception, and at that point maybe even a pick 6. So again, that brings me to aggression. Is he going to be aggressive enough to make a play on that ball? Because if he's not, then there's really no point in playing it. We saw this is actually very similar to the soft squat in cover 2 sink and some of the cover 2 zone blitzes in Madden 18. He's supposed to jump that out route, but sometimes he doesn't. And then even if he does, he's usually not quick enough to break on the ball. So we'll have to wait and see how it plays there. And then, of course, if you have a vertical for number 1, that safety has to relate. He's got to convert to a deep half, and he's got to get out there and cover. Again, that's going to bring us to the issue with play action. If he's getting kind of sucked up, there's no way he's ever going to be able to cover the number 1 receiver. So that's really something that kind of makes me think that play action won't be in the game, just because the developers always like to err on the side of safety. So the new players coming in to pick palms, they don't get a 1-play touchdown against them really easily. So I think it'll be safe. But otherwise, it'll be big gains and touchdowns. So on the other side, again, if you have a number 1 or if you have a number 2 going vertical, that safety's got to relate. That number 1 now is not going to relate to number 2 because he's going vertical, so now he can relate to number 1. But again, that brings up the issue with poor coverage at that point, because again, the far side corner is playing the flat. The far side safety is playing the vertical on the far side. The near safety is playing the underneath post, and then now the cornerback's got to cover that post, who can be a speedy wide receiver all the way across the field. So you can see a large area for a potential inside pass lead. Bad rules, again, what's that quarter flat going to do if we switch quick outside route from number 2, quick inside for number 1? Is he going to be left in the dust there, or is he going to leave a big gap open there for an easy gain? Then adjustments. Adjustments are really, really key. What if you do something even just as simple as putting a hard flat in? Is everything just going to change to spot drop? Which would make sense because, again, we don't want spot drop and match coverage in the same play. But sometimes you maybe want a small adjustment, just one side, maybe a hard flat, because you know something's going to happen there. Will it break everything down? I don't know. It'll be interesting. And that kind of brings me to my predictions on this. Number 2 is kind of going to touch on that. But number 1, my prediction is the defenders are not going to be aggressive enough because, match, and especially how I feel about this match, it's not going to be based on awareness or play recognition. I think they're going to do the right thing every single time. So in order to counteract that, I don't think the defenders are going to play really, really well. I think a lot of situations, just like man coverage, that if the receiver might be technically might be technically covered, but there's still ways that you can squeeze that ball in pretty easily. Second thing, I don't think this will play a really big role at the highest level. So this is what I was touching on earlier, is if we make any adjustments, and high level play is predominantly based on what good adjustments you can make, does everything kind of break down? Does it just revert to spot drop coverage? And especially, like at the high level, even at the mid to high level, where I almost consider myself, is you're never really playing just a basic coverage. You're manning up one guy, you're putting one side on a hard flat, another side on a cloud flat, you're putting a deep zone into something crazy, throwing some other blitzes in, and that really doesn't fit with the flow of match defense, where the whole defense has to be organized as a unit. But if you see any of these really good players, it's kind of just like chaos in a sense, because if you're coming up against somebody that's good on offense, they're going to make the right reads, so you have to throw something totally that they've never seen before. If they're seeing cover 4 quarters, hundreds of thousands of times, they're going to have no problem picking that apart. But again, we'll have to wait and see. It's going to cause confusion and frustration. I think there's going to be a growing curve of what people can expect. Again, this goes back to the bad rules. Maybe they understand what's supposed to happen out of this coverage, but maybe something's, not quite right. Maybe that quarter flat's not playing things quite right. Or they're just confused with it in general. They're expecting cover 4 to help you out deep, but your safeties and corners kind of suck down, and then you'll beat them over the top. So I think it'll cause confusion and frustration on both the offense and the defense. But in the end, I think whether it's done right or done poorly, I think it's still going to be a lot of fun. I think added tools are always really needed in this game. Let us kind of figure out how to play with them and how we're going to use them. The more tools, the better. Anyway, that's kind of the first video I'm going to be doing on Madden 19. Hopefully as more content comes, I can start commenting on it, and then I can't wait for the game to drop and we can start breaking the game together. If you haven't subscribed, if this is a new video this is a video that you've seen it the first time of mine, definitely subscribe, because we're definitely going to be getting you a step ahead of the competition and early on Madden 19. Okay, I hope you guys liked that one. We'll see you in the next one.